Welcome to another episode. Today we're joined by Angus again. He's making a reappearance after a very long time. Angus, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. My debut appearance on a conference debrief. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean this one was special because this is the first time I haven't been to one of the main conferences, and we're doing a debrief. So this is like a good takeaway session for me as well.
So this
And
is
I
just
want to
you gonna just you asking me questions about how it was.
pretty much like what actually happened, so that I can save on all the travel time and still get like all the takeaways.
Perfect. Let's do it.
I mean, let's start with the basics, right? Like, how is the city? Because on Twitter, like, everybody just couldn't stop talking about how great the city was.
I think there is a very clear reason why it's one of the most like popular tourist destinations in the world. It's
Mhm.
objectively beautiful. The weather is perfect. Like vibes are good. Food is nice. Drinks are good. So there's a reason Cannes is Cannes. Like a lot of people will talk about going to New York for a conference or Paris for a conference. It's like yeah, it's a big city and people like those cities. But Cannes is like it's a tourist destination. It's where you go on holiday, and that felt very apparent. Like everybody was kind of dressed in their best linen attire and like walking around in their sunglasses and standing around having a nice cold drink. So it parts of it kind of felt a little bit silly, like you felt like you were on holiday. But it also just meant it made for like really positive atmosphere. There's a
Mhm.
very like bearish sentiment. I think last year when ECC announced that it was going to be Cannes, and there was a lot of honestly in hindsight a lot of really bad takes from all across the board. But I think coming away from Cannes this year, the sentiment was really positive. It was a great place to be, good weather, good atmosphere, good places to host events. Um, and I think the biggest takeaway, which we'll probably get into a little bit more, I believe the idea around hosting the event or hosting EthCC in Cannes was that it's very difficult to host small side events because there aren't that many conference spaces. There's like
Mhm.
the main conference space, and then I went to two other spaces that I would consider kind of side events. And that was really it. There wasn't much else to do, which meant tons of people actually went to ETC and actually sat and listened to all of the like main events. So I think it was from that perspective really positive, and it meant that all of the other things that were going on were kind of like evening happy hours at a beach club, which again is like feels like a nice place to be on holiday. So overall, Cannes was a success. I think everyone was kind of happy to hear that they're doing it there next year again.
I mean, when you put it like that, it makes sense because, like, generally, whenever there's a big conference, there are a lot of side events, right? So there
Yeah,
ends up being like an L2 day or an Interop
yeah,
day or something or the other. But this time, I didn't see anything, which is why, for me, it like from the outside, it made it harder to actually get any sort of insight because I was like, okay, what is actually going on? Because nobody is talking about anything, or I'm not seeing
yeah.
like any talks coming out on Twitter.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, and like I am a huge fan of Stable Summit. I will always go a little bit early to Stable Summit. I think the Party Action people who host it are fantastic hosts, and they had Stable Summit this year in Cannes, and like the event space was the best that I saw outside of kind of the main conference venue, but still not like a wonderful event space. And usually they always have like a top tier space, and I think that just goes to show that there really wasn't enough places to host good side events. And so yeah, as I said, there were no side conferences. There was no L2
Mhm.
day. I think there was a multi-chain day.
Yeah.
I know that Aave hosted their kind of DeFi summer day, which was quite successful, but it was like 20 minutes out of town in some kind of mansion in the hills, similar to how Robinhood did their announcement, which again I'm sure we'll get into. But if you're not kind of hosting one of these like bespoke niche mansion side events where you can actually get people, then people were just going to the main event, which again is actually quite positive and made for quite like consolidated conversation. One of the biggest takes from the conferences over the last 2 years is that there's too many side events. It's all fragmented. Where am I meant to go? I don't know where, like which one's highest signal, etc. So yeah, it was successful.
Was the main event venue actually a casino, or was it next to a casino, or something like that?
It was next to a casino. Yeah, it was quite funny. If you were like the best angle to take a photo of the conference venue was outside the entrance to the casino, and so you had like all the big banners that said ECC, and then it was kind of fronted with the word casino, which I saw a few people post on Twitter. Quite
That,
entertaining.
that was like good touch. And then like of course all of you guys had problems going out of the city in a way, like coming out of the city and going home. Like I remember
Yeah,
Marco just messaging me like he was on a 20-hour bus ride back home, and then he missed his like connecting bus, and then countless people were in a same position.
yeah. We out of the five Stargate team members that were there, one person managed to get home. A first try. Everyone else had flights cancelled. We had someone take a train to Milan to fly back to where they're from. I personally had a flight cancelled on the Friday. I then chose to stay till the Sunday because I'll wait for the strikes to end. I then had two flights in succession cancelled on Sunday and spent 8 hours in the airport. and then my flight on Monday eventually did happen after a 4 hour delay. So I'm no stranger to the Nice airport, and I was super bullish Can until I spent 3 days waiting to get home.
I mean, no conference can be perfect, so I feel like this is fine. We should expect something to go wrong.
Yeah, and honestly, if it was planned for, like I would have planned to stay there for the weekend anyway. It's again, as I said, a nice place to be for the weekend. But having flights cancelled and plans changed just gets a little bit
Yeah,
difficult. So
that's
moving
never
forward,
nice.
I'll make sure to keep track of the French airstrikes.
Okay, so how are we going to do this? Like before recording, we've accumulated some takes from the timeline. Like these are general takes, and then we'll kind of discuss them with an interop angle. And then I've also like forced Angus to come up with like five interop takeaways from his time at EthCC. So we'll go through them first, right? So the first takeaway, Angus, is that interop is a day one concern for apps, chains, and asset issuers, and that's a sentiment that you felt from coming out of the conference.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not necessarily something new, but I think is only stronger. And the fact that it's not even being brought up as like a question anymore, just as like a given is super interesting. Because again, even like a year ago, it was kind of a question of do I launch my asset on multiple chains initially? Do I launch my application on multiple chains? Even as a chain, like what are my primary concerns? Is it just getting my core infrastructure going, or is it like ensuring that my interoperability is set up from day
Mm.
one? And I think for all three of those asset issuers, applications, and chains today, Interop is a core part of all of their strategy. And it is no longer even a conversation. Like every single asset issuer is going multi chain. I think the one nuance that there is to this is, again, asset issuers and chains are definitely thinking about
Yeah.
interoperability from day one. Applications are often thinking about like, am I deploying my own app chain or am I going to some kind of high throughput chain usually? But still thinking about how do I ensure that I can kind of onboard users from other ecosystems. And so it's not about how does the application go natively multi-chain yet. I think that will kind of come in the future, but it is definitely how do I bring multi-chain users to my application on some ecosystem that I choose.
Yeah, I feel like for chains and asset issuers, the things have gotten so much better from like an interop perspective. I feel like if a chain is launching, let's say 6 months from now, 12 months from now, we're already in touch with them and they're like already basically talking to all the teams trying to figure out what are the different options, what are the different combinations that they can use for like issuing the gas token, for example, or like
Yeah.
using the liquidity bridge or like which bridge is going to be live from day one. So I feel like chains are definitely there. Asset issuers as well. Like LZOFT, of course, like the adoption is pretty crazy. So all the stable coins are already there, but I feel like there's still a gap in terms of all these new institutions kind of launching. Like, I think I saw a tweet. I think it was from Philip. Like he had a lot of conversations with people in the US, and then he felt that people are still thinking about launching on a single chain or like launching on Solana and not necessarily on interop rails, which I felt was like interesting because we keep talking about it's so obvious for us, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
launch on interop rails, but then I mean, Philip came away with from conversations feeling like okay, people are still considering just Ethereum or just Ethereum and Solana or like a few chains.
I think it's a little bit of both, and you're kind of it again is definitely part of the conversation, and maybe the idea is kind of launch on Ethereum and then expand out where there is demand. But I mean, one of the biggest ones that at least we hear a lot about is the Wyoming stablecoin, which
Yeah.
obviously is the first like U.S. regulated official stablecoin and is launching natively on I think it's 8 chains from day one, which is not just like a oh we'll probably do Ethereum and Solana. It is like we want to be everywhere all at once. We will natively issue omni chain, and like this is how we're going to start. And I do think that will continue to be the trend. I would be very surprised if anyone was happy to just live on Ethereum
Yeah.
and only have Ethereum users and kind of rely on third party applications or third party bridges to help kind of onboard liquidity. I think the trend is definitely towards like native day one omni-chain interop.
Makes sense, and I'm definitely like on the same page with you. Let's go to the second one. So the second one says institutions need programmable infrastructure and deeper liquidity to come on chain. Like, what do you mean by programmable infrastructure? Like deeper liquidity, of course. Like you can never have enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the deeper liquidity is quite an obvious one. Like we've always said, when the institutions come on chain, like we'll add a couple zeros and it'll be trillions and it'll be quadrillions. And like the liquidity question is not is pretty simple. Like once you can move more size, once you can move more size reliably, once you can do it for less fees, then it actually becomes feasible for some of these institutions to do it. And honestly, even a lot of the like largest participants in crypto today, some of the like fiat on rampers or market makers will want to move very significant size and need to do so obviously for as cheap as possible. And so providing them with rails to actually uh, if you need to move $20 million from one chain to another, if you're using USDC, it's pretty simple. If you're using USDT zero, it's even simpler. If you're moving $20 million of ETH from one L2 to another, like you're gonna have to match that against someone else's order, or use like a centralized exchange, or break it up and use multiple different bridges. So it is just, yeah, it is still a problem. And as that liquidity scales within crypto, which it will continue to do, then I think we'll continue to see more of the liquidity flow in, just because again, it's actually possible. The programmable infrastructure part is just that a lot of, again, this more sophisticated actors, as we've discussed before, you and I, will not be coming to connect their uh, wallet to a front end. They want like access via an API. They want to know that delivery is guaranteed between different chains. They want to know that pricing is guaranteed between different chains. They want to know that a certain liquidity route is reliable.
Mhm.
They just need something that they can actually build into relatively sophisticated infrastructure, and can be relied upon, and can be done in a programmatic way.
I mean, I feel like there's just a different level of demand or like sophistication when it comes to a demand from institutions, right? Like, let's say, sure, we do provide 10 different routes, but then they need like tighter slippage, or they just have certain requirements where their users cannot have like bad codes. And then, like you said, like they need to access it through the API, because they're like they would have such a large user base that they would basically get rate limited at some point if they were trying another way. So they need like higher rate limits basically. So I feel like in general, our infrastructure needs to be scaled to be able to serve the institutions better, which I feel like certain teams do better than the others. Like certain teams that have seen that sort of demand, and they know that this can just break within a few hours if there are a few heavy integrations, and like certain teams are just better prepared for it. And Interop needs to like go up another level as a category itself to kind of
Yeah.
serve all the institutions.
Yeah, 100%. And a conversation that we see a lot is like they, as I said, they just need reliability. They need to know that when a transaction is submitted, that it goes through. There is no like, the reversion rate cannot be 99%. It maybe cannot even be like 99.9% or on reversion rate, success rate. Like it just has to work. And especially if you are moving significant amounts of capital, even retail users are kind of scared about bridging. And so if you're moving, again, institutional capital, you need these transactions to work, and you need to be able to rely on the infrastructure that you're using to actually be a part of your kind of day-to-day operations. I think that is just like a level up. I think we're definitely getting there. Some of the more crypto native institutions, or just larger, more sophisticated actors with more capital within crypto today, are starting to use these rails. Like the amount of USDT that's moved between Tron and Ethereum today on, for example, the legacy mesh, USDT zero legacy mesh, is really quite significant. And that is only kind of ramping up. So I think it is just like a curve. We'll continue to see it increase, but that is definitely felt in some of these conversations, because a lot of these institutions are now a part of the conversations. Like
Yeah.
everyone was at EthCC. All of the different banks or institutions that you may have wanted to talk to, they were all there. They were just like, and not only just exploring, they were kind of interested. But yeah, they have quote unquote higher demands.
It's interesting that the conversation of the target customer or who is using the interop rails has just shifted away from retail users or applications to institutions straight away. Like, I mean, it's not straight away, but at this point, everyone is talking about how can institutions leverage crypto, how can institutions leverage interop, which is pretty interesting for me. Like, considering 4 years ago, this was just a thesis.
Yes, it is interesting, but it's also like, people are going to flame me for this take, but like for the most part, as a chain, like Interop is solved. You can get everything that you need to do for retail users for the most part, with some nuances. Like you can do a lot of the things that you need to do, but as an institution, you cannot do so many of the things that you need to do. So I think a lot of us who are building solutions to these hard problems are kind of looking to the next hardest problem to solve, which is that.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the third one. So it says compliant bridging is essential for enterprises and institutional adoption. Like when you say compliant bridging, this is basically like making sure everything is in check with their legal side of things, and which is very fair. But I feel like people kind of underestimate how much work it takes to go through some of those checks if you have an institutional integration partner. Like it takes months, and you actually have to go through so many tests to make sure your infrastructure is compliant in every way.
Yeah, there are so many things that I think a lot of teams in crypto have not even heard about in terms of kind of like regulation and compliance. And so again, when you're interacting with more call it like Web 2 or traditional tech companies that are looking to use this, and they start asking about these, like, can you prove that you have a MiCA compliant white paper? Can you prove that you're SOC 2 compliant? All of these additional steps that when people kind of set up a small crypto business, they don't maybe
Like
think about
the
from
BD
first
team is
principles.
chat GPTing like, okay, what is a Mika compliant
Yeah, yeah.
white paper?
And again, like now that a lot of these teams are interested, they are demanding these things, and so there are some really kind of interesting new things coming up on the Interop side that people will have seen. Stargate just put up a proposal to add an additional DVN to our Plume route, because Plume is working with a team called Predicate, who do a lot of compliance stuff within DeFi. I've worked with Uniswap before. They run a DVN on the Layer Zero network, kind of like a contextual DVN that's compliant. And so Stargate DAO is looking to add that DVN into that route to and from Plume, because again, kind of that's something that Plume are looking to do with their institutional and RWA push. So it's definitely starting. I feel like we're kind of moving over that edge into compliance. It's very different to like OG crypto ethos, but again, is the direction that a lot of things are going in.
I mean, so the next one or the next point I have here is about privacy, and then it's like it's not from your take, but I saw it on the timeline, and someone had just written like privacy is a prerequisite for institutions. Like again, I think some of the customizations available in Interop protocols actually serve this use case, but then privacy is still a very niche topic even in Interop. So I feel like I don't know how you're thinking about this at this point, but I don't have a very good understanding of like uh, okay, sure. Like institutions don't want to share sensitive data, but privacy from a user perspective in a cross-chain context, like what is it? What does that mean? Like, do I just not share my information as a user? Like, is that it, or is there more to it?
I think there's probably more to it. I had a little back and forth on Twitter about this last week. There are so many different levels to it, but your first point is very true. Many of the interop protocols, obviously particularly layer 0 v2, and this was a big part of layer 0 v2, the ability to like add in new verification methods as they get developed is super, super important. And ZK is like, it's a space that we've been talking about for 8 years, and we'll talk about for another 8 years. There's so much development ongoing, and like different ways of verification will continue to come up, and they'll be cheaper, and they'll be faster, and they'll be more global, I suppose. And so the ability to like continue iterating with the newest tech that comes along, I think, is super important. I haven't heard this take as much. I saw the same tweet as you did, where you pulled this from, of privacy being a kind of a prerequisite for institutions. I think privacy is important for institutions. It's certainly not a prerequisite, because we see institutions on chain today. I also think that certain types of users will want to kind of obfuscate their cross-chain transactions or use dark pools, or whatever it is. But I don't necessarily think today that's either like a prerequisite for users. I do think it will become possible, and I think people will use it, but I don't necessarily know if that's something that's holding us back that much.
I mean, it's definitely for a very specific set of users. Like, even if you look at the existing ZK consumer-facing apps, like Railgun, for example. I mean, Vitalik is a big user, but then there's a very specific type of use case that like you want to use those applications for. So I don't know. Like I haven't heard too many users, at least on the jumper side or LeFi side, kind of asking for privacy protection. But I guess like that's just another sophistication that we'll get to, or like we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, I think again there are definitely use cases for it. There will be huge unlocks with it. I don't necessarily think that it's holding us back from like the things that we're already doing. Um, but again, it's like a space that we're keeping an eye on, and very happy that we're built in a way that we can kind of use some of that tech as it becomes more relevant to us.
So, next takeaway, chain abstraction had surprisingly little presence. I feel like anyone who sees this, they will say that we're biased to say this, but I don't know. It's your takeaway, so you
I
explain.
I don't think I heard the word chain abstraction in the 8 days I was in camp, is my honest truth. And like there used to be chain abstraction brunches and interrupt days where chain abstraction was like the main thing. And I just don't think chain abstraction. I have always said chain abstraction is real. Like yes, we are abstracting chains away from the users, and that's kind of the end goal. But like chain abstraction as a thing to build is not necessarily what people are focused on anymore. Again, it just kind of becomes inherent into, if you are building an asset and you want it to be cross chain, you can abstract chains away. But yeah, I didn't hear anyone talk about chain abstraction as like a thing.
Yeah, I feel like because there's basically no definition of chain abstraction, so you don't know when someone is talking about chain abstraction. But even though, like when we were talking about applications using or like applications onboarding users from different chains, like technically that can be
Yeah.
chain abstraction, right? So I don't know. It's just the term being very loosely used, which is why maybe we don't hear it like, okay, let's have a chain abstraction summit or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, there were also just like less side conferences, but
Hmm.
if we're allowed to touch on the conference from the week before, even at like Interop Day in Berlin, like I
Yeah.
don't think I heard chain abstraction there. I think you and I have the same take, which is basically like chain abstraction is inherently everything that Interop is, whether or not it was like a real thing. I don't know. Still don't know. The jury is still out.
Like my takeaway at this point is basically it's a narrative for better positioning, right? Like how does one cohort of projects kind of make space for themselves in the existing ecosystem? Then
Yeah.
it's a good framework to use. But then because like even interop as a word is used very loosely, so there's no definition. So I have nothing against like using the term chain abstraction, but when you think about, oh, chain abstraction was not mentioned as much, like it makes sense why it was not
Yeah.
mentioned. Like I'm not expecting anyone to mention interop anyway.
No, I think chain abstraction is kind of folded back into Interop as a broad umbrella covering everything that moves across chains. And yeah, I think that's kind of where it will stay. I do think Interop will become less spoken about as it's less of a challenge, I think.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're moving into like the general takes, like not really interop focused, but like I want, of course, the interop kind of takeaway from this as well. So the first one says existing leaders are consolidating and expanding their teams, which I feel like is super true for interop because we had this first wave of projects, and then now we have like consolidation across the board in a way, and then certain teams are doing better than the rest, and there are not too many new projects showing up every month or so.
Yeah. I mean, it feels very kind of like traditional business cycle in every new industry, right? Like leaders do well, they can afford to kind of consolidate and expand and also acquire, like even Li-Fi, who's become
Mhm.
like a huge leader in the aggregator, is looking to expand and acquire Catalyst. It's like it will always happen. I think there have been some really big ones with Coinbase acquisitions, Stripe
Yeah.
acquisitions, yeah, some kind of like bigger name ones, but I think it's also happening across some of the smaller teams. There was like Vertex yesterday that was announced that they're
Mhm.
kind of folding into Inc. Yeah, I think it will continue to happen. I think it's a really, really good sign for the industry that it's kind of maturing. I think it's also a pretty good sign for the incumbents that it is kind of difficult to break into some categories where there are leaders.
Mhm.
Um, Having said that, it is super interesting. Like crypto as an industry is probably one of the spaces where it's easiest to win over users and like lowest friction to move between products. And like as a quick sidebar, like users moving from punt fund over to the
Bonk.
uh,
Yeah.
bonk thing, it like the some of the charts that are coming out over the last few weeks about that is super interesting. So yeah, I do think it's just like a sign of the industry maturing. Going back to a lot of the like institutions onboarding, we haven't really spoken about Robinhood yet. I'm sure we'll get there, but like Robinhood coming on board and maybe being able to take over a lot of the incumbents in what they're doing is definitely a conversation that was super big, both on the timeline and in Can. So yeah, it's very obvious that this is happening. There's also a lot of teams I think that had success maybe over the last few years, but don't really have the runway to keep going and are probably looking to get folded into other companies where they can continue their vision, but maybe with a little bit more guidance or a little bit more runway.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at it from a interop perspective, it's basically a grind, right? Like if you're not scaling in terms of distribution, like your team is not growing, and you can feel the stagnation at some point. Like it's very hard to stay motivated, I guess, like as a team, and then keep going down the same path. So, like you said, like we will probably see more and more teams folding or getting acquired, which makes sense for like a growing category, a growing industry. You
Yeah.
mentioned Robinhood, so like another takeaway is that fintechs have arrived and well. Everyone has seen Robinhood's announcements, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. So the general sentiment around institutions is that, of course, Robinhood stole the spotlight, but there were so many more institutions on the ground. Like everyone you would talk, not everyone, but like a lot of people that you would talk to were actually from institutions. And then like a sidebar take here was that BD is now just like enterprise sales because there are so many institutions in crypto.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those things are true. Robinhood definitely. stole the show. So many people spoke about it. Everyone kind of knew that, and they obviously knew that there was going to be a Robinhood event. They knew that there was going to be an announcement. Arbitrum had also spoken about the fact that there was going to be this announcement. I was not lucky enough to go, but some of the people that were at that event also just said it was like basically the best crypto event they've ever been to. Like it
It
looked
looked like a
beautiful on the
movie.
stream. Yeah, it looked like a movie. It was held in some like gorgeous mansion in the hills of Cannes, overlooking everything, infinity pool. It looked incredible, and again, like word on the ground was that it was a very, very well held event. It was also a very successful announcement, and people spoke about it at length, both in terms of, it's amazing that Robinhood are choosing something like Arbitrum. Like we've known Arbitrum for a long time. It's such a success for Arbitrum. Also talking about what that means for incumbents and
Mm.
how they will kind of compete. What it means for existing users versus bringing on new users. Obviously, Robinhood has tons and tons of users. I think more than Coinbase on a daily
I think
basis, I think
they
was a
just have
recent
a
stat.
lot of retail users.
Yeah, exactly. And so bringing new users into crypto, which is wonderful. We've always
Mm.
wanted more users. Where are the next billion users coming from? They're coming from places like this. So yeah, they definitely stole the show. It's also, as we were kind of talking about before, it's like elevating the bar for announcements. It's elevating the bar for the infrastructure that we're building. It's elevating the bar for BD, which now needs to be a lot of enterprise sales and like yeah, have more like sophisticated sales cycles, making sure that you're like following through on it's no longer a Telegram message. You can no longer do a logo X logo partnership. This is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting a lot more serious.
So are we going to see you in a suit at the next conference? Like,
I will certainly be bringing a suit to the next conference. I didn't bring one to Cannes. It was far too hot, as Vlad was saying in his Robinhood announcement. But yeah, certainly more sophisticated conversations going on.
nice. And then there was like another related thing which said the sentiment around L2s is far less bearish at this point because of the Robinhood announcement. I don't know if I agree with it completely because, I mean, Robinhood announcement is, of course, such a big moment. Uh, I feel like as a highlight for this year. But then the sentiment around L2s hasn't changed at all. Like people are not talking about it right now, but if you look at the L2 landscape, it's a graveyard pretty much. Like outside of the 6, 7, 8 chains, like the top 8, 10 chains, none of the chains are seeing any sort of like good usage numbers.
Yeah, but wasn't that always the case? Like, I was trying to think about whether I have noticed that the sentiment around L2s is particularly bearish at the moment, or was bearish pre Robinhood announcement. I don't think so. There are just successful chains and slightly less successful chains. Like, that has always been the case. Will there be 1 million L2s? Potentially, if everyone has like an app chain and there are 1 million successful applications. But naturally, like, volume and liquidity consolidates to the places where most people want it to be. That is always going to be the way it is. um, yeah, I don't know whether I necessarily agree with this. I think again, it was a huge, like very successful announcement for Arbitrum and the Arb stack, which I think that I saw a lot of takes about. But yeah, a lot of the L2s have been very successful. Like
Mhm.
Unichain really has grown a lot over the last few months. Base has been crushing nonstop since the launch of Base. Um, yeah, I think generally L2s have
I
been
think
very
this
successful.
this general takeaway is more about the sentiment around L2s being parasitic to Ethereum. Like nobody is talking about that
Mm.
right now, maybe, but I feel like again, like these things come and go, right? Like so people talked about it a lot for 2 months, and then the Twitter algorithm doesn't help. Like if something starts going viral, like everyone wants to talk about it, and then like people would talk about it on podcasts, people would write articles about it. Suddenly there's like a thesis about it, and then three
Yeah.
months later, everyone is now talking about how Robinhood and like stocks on chain are the next big thing.
Yeah, I I think people got a little bit bored. Like it was a dead beaten horse. People got bored of talking about it. I think when the Robinhood chain launches and the amount of revenue that they're doing and how much of that accrues to ETH and ETH as an asset, when those numbers start coming out, I'm sure it'll come up again.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, it's not that the problem has gone away. It's not that L2 is all of a sudden are paying more rent to Ethereum. It is still, yeah, it still exists. I think it'll come back.
Yeah. Wait, the next takeaway is actually pretty interesting. Like it says, grifters and small crypto teams were almost absent.
This was very true from Cannes, from ETC, and I don't know what it was. Again,
I
I don't
think
know
it's the
whether it was
location
like
because it's expensive. And now the small teams can afford it, and the
but
grifters just feel there'll be a better crowd there.
it wasn't only grifters, and I don't know whether this is okay to say, but like random crypto degens that just like turn up in all conferences just weren't there either. Like all
It's the
conversations I had
location.
were
It's
productive
the
and sophisticated, and Yeah, I don't know what it was, but it certainly like by day 4 or 5, I really felt like, wow, I haven't had any bad conversations. I haven't spoken to anyone who I don't think is like moving the space forward, which was super interesting. And again, if that's what Cannes is kind of self-selecting for as a venue, then absolutely keep it there and keep kind of a smaller group of real builders.
I mean, if you think about it, like what kind of users or builders in crypto kind of live near or close to south of France, like you would probably not think about meme coin traders. I mean,
Yeah,
not to say that meme coin traders are not the best users. Like I
pretty
am a meme coin
successful.
trader, but yeah, like you probably expect. Genuine crypto builders to be there, like bigger teams to be there who can actually shell out, I don't know, 30, 40K, like for the event, because it is expensive. Like if it was in Dubai, or like a Bangkok, or like somewhere in Asia where there's more of that like trading crowd, more of like retail users, like you would expect a mixed crowd, which is also a good thing, because like whenever I go to let's say like ETH India, I do expect a lot of students to be there, because that's
Yeah.
the sort of crowd that the conference attracts.
Yeah, I've probably two things to say. One, we are kind of lucky for a lot of our team to be Europe based, and so there's a lot of very cheap European flights, and so it's like a good location for us, and still probably the cheapest conference that we've been to this year in terms of like bringing the team there. Um, the second thing, I don't know how I feel about. I also noticed there were a lot of smaller teams that we work with that didn't send anyone, which is kind of the second part of this take that small crypto teams were out there, which I think I is both. It's a shame that small crypto teams cannot be in that environment because again, I'm coming away from Cannes very bullish, had a lot of really good conversations. It's great for smaller crypto teams to be able to be a part of that. I think there are enough conferences around the world, like you said, ETH India, like Token, Bangkok was riddled with a lot of really kind of like small, more hackathon type teams. So there are still opportunities for those teams. I think it's probably okay that there are some conferences that don't. Like there naturally is also like digital asset summit, which is a very kind of high signal
Yeah.
conference, which is more expensive to attend. You also don't see small teams there. There'll probably be some people that feel that it's a shame that EthCC is kind of quote unquote graduating into that like more expensive or more difficult to attend bracket. But I think generally the conference was very successful, and so if that's what it takes, then it's good that there are so many other ETH centric events like all of the ETH global hackathons that go on, as well as like ETH Denver, which are maybe more accessible to smaller teams.
Makes sense. So two more takeaways. One says there was almost no emphasis on meme coins or broader speculative on-chain experimentation. I think like this kind of builds on what we just talked about. Like it's just the type of people that were there.
Yeah, I think so. There was still a lot of chatter around obviously like clubs and like on-chain execution of trading, which I still loop into speculation. It still like comes from a lot of the like gambler type people within crypto. But it's also like you can build quite sophisticated financial instrumentation on those, and so it's kind of like again teetering into the more sophisticated side of it. Um, the only talk around meme coins was there was a lot of ongoing chatter around Pump Fund's ICO and the private investors and who was involved and is 4 billion undervalued, overvalued. I had that conversation quite a few times, which was quite interesting.
Makes sense. I mean, I feel like that's another major event where like you just want to speculate on what's going to be the outcome, right? So
Yeah,
it's going to be part of every conference, and frankly, like it's almost a small talk tactic in a way.
yeah. But it's also like it's funny we kind of loop it into the meme coin. Like I just said, it was a meme coin conversation, but it's also a
Yeah,
company raising $300 million cash on in one day, basically.
at 4 billion valuation.
Yeah, so it yeah is considered maybe meme coin and meme coiny, but what in their announcement today they did say that they're planning to take over Facebook, Reddit,
Yeah,
Twitch, YouTube, everything.
TikTok.
So
Yeah.
very very exciting.
Makes sense. Okay. Last takeaway. Mobile first. Like, there's a lot of bullish sentiment around mobile first applications, and the takeaway actually says like with most wallet activity now on phones, builders are prioritizing mobile design and interaction from the start. I don't know how true that statistic is, like most wallet activity being on phones, but I do see the point of the takeaway. Like the general trend, like people are using their phones more and more for everything, and then I guess like as a personal preference, I just do everything on my laptop related to crypto and like buying and selling assets. But then I don't know, like so in India specifically, as soon as there was 5G connectivity on phones, YouTube numbers just went through the roof, right? Because suddenly
Mm,
everyone in India had a phone, and then you could connect to YouTube, and consumption just went up. So I can
yeah,
definitely see how in countries like India, if there are more and more crypto applications that are mobile first, maybe we will see more people getting onboarded.
I think so. I am also. I don't have a single wallet on any of my phones, and I
Mhm.
don't think I will. It's a very strange UX, but I think it's because we're boomers, Arjun. I think again, like someone posted this stat on Twitter. I think it's like 60% of like all internet traffic is from phones these days. Maybe
Yeah.
it's higher. And the next generation of crypto users will be mobile first. Because if they were okay with using laptops for their interactions, they would probably already have started doing it. But because it's difficult to do from the phone, maybe they don't. I thought it was very interesting that Robinhood's announcement slash demo was purely mobile, as far as I saw, at least. Like the demo video that they were showing, or the tweet that came out was mobile first. I thought that was quite interesting.
But that's again like them catering to their user base. Like if you remember,
Yeah,
I don't know which movie it was, but then the meme stock trading saga, like it basically showed the scenes where like students in their dorm rooms kind of pulling up their phone and the UX being super slick, and they could just buy like their favorite meme stock
yeah.
on their phone super quickly on Robinhood.
But it's 100% a trend. Like the rumors of the base announcement that's coming out of
Mhm.
TBA, which I believe is going to be the base app,
Yeah.
which is replacing Coinbase Wallet, or at least Coinbase Wallet tweeted that there's a teaser that it'd be the base app. Pump Fun also doing a mobile app. There was the announcement today or yesterday
OpenSea
from
also acquired someone.
yeah, and Phantom doing their Phantom perps, Hyperliquid natively built
Mhm.
into the Phantom app. Like this is all mobile first. It is definitely the trend.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like we're just boomers. But yeah.
That's fine. If I'm a boomer, I'm a boomer. It's okay.
Awesome. Like we've gone through all of our notes. I feel like that was a pretty good summary. Like I now feel like I'm well caught up with what went down. Anything else that you would add, or I don't know, like anything that came up from like your conversations at the conference?
No, I think it's a lot of it, we had a lot of similar conversations. There are still more asset issuers. There are still more chains that are looking to expand across chains. Like we are always in the same conversations. I think
Mhm.
something that is particularly interesting is that there is now a real fight for day one liquidity on new chains. There are a lot of chains that are launching with being more selective around what assets they're kind of championing. I think like Berachain was an obvious example of this, where they have the Honey stablecoin and that is backed by particular stablecoins and go through governance to change what those backing stablecoins are. Different ecosystems like Katana that just launched with a particular stablecoin that they are very bullish on using Agora. I think that will continue to be a trend. I think it is something that, again, like a conversation that we find ourselves in a lot is what does day one liquidity look like? Who are the best asset issuers? How do you get those assets there day one? How do you make sure the liquidity is there? That's a really, really interesting development that I think will be interesting to follow over the next 6 to 12 months, and I think can be quite defining for an ecosystem if you get some of that strategy right.
Makes sense. I mean, I feel like for interop teams, a lot of the groundwork has been laid, and even if you talk to the teams and what's on the roadmap, like everyone knows what to build, right? But
Yeah,
things just take time to build, and then so it is consolidation in a way,
yeah.
and we do end up having a lot of the same conversations at every conference with different people. So like, I definitely agree. But like, what's the next big conference that you're going to be attending?
I will be at KBW and Token in Singapore. That might be the next one. That seems like a long time away, which means no travel, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, okay, in July I'm going to be at home, like no travel at all, and then August is probably going to be the same as well. I don't know. I might not do another conference for 3 6 months. Honestly, don't know.
Wow. Time to build, time to write.
Yeah, like it does feel nice just to have the same routine.
Yeah, definitely. I was in Berlin, then New York, then Cannes, and struggled to come home from Cannes. We have a very big 6 months ahead of us, so I'm excited to just kind of get heads down a little bit.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Angus. Like it's always nice to chat. And yeah, like thank you for taking us through what happened at EthCC.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I look forward to the next one.